Today's guest is Scott Burgmeyer, founder and CEO of Become More Group, a leadership strategist, author, and continuous improvement expert as we promote continuous improvement on our channel. And he has the experience spanning manufacturing, safety, human resources, family business, technology, and higher education. Scott has spent decades helping organizations unlock growth through leadership and better systems. And his passion is helping people and businesses to become more than they thought possible. And today, he is here to share lessons that every automotive professional, business owner, and industrial leader can actually apply immediately. Now, what if the biggest problems in the automotive world were not really car problems at all, but people, process, and culture problems? And today's guest, he spent many years working inside the leadership and continuous improvement and organizational transformation. And his ideas could hit even harder than you expect. So really, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Scott. And we're going to go through, so just sit back and enjoy the ride and see how much we're going to be learning from this. So Scott, you came up through HR, food, safety, and continuous improvement before building your own company. What actually pushed you from a stable path into creating something of your own?
It's always an interesting question. I joke that I've had a lot of jobs, and mostly probably because I can't seem to hold one down. But really what happened was I was working for a large organization, and I got bored at work. And I had people that were like, hey, I need help, or could you help me streamline this process? We're struggling with rework, or our customers always seem to be mad at us. Could you help us? And so I'd take vacation days and go help them or meet them for breakfast. And I eventually learned that, oh, I could actually make some money at this. And oh, I'm not too bad at this. And people started paying me. And I did that for, 10 or 11 years, kind of just have a side business and do it on my time off. And then eventually to the point of, I told my wife, I'm like, I think I can make a real living at this. What do you think? Can I try it for 6 months? And that really happened in 2018 and really haven't looked back since. And what I always say is, gosh, I wish I would have done that sooner.
Always comes at a later time, but at the same time, it comes at the right time. So as they say, nothing happens before the time, and which we have to find out that if it's the right time, the most important thing to do is to follow up on it and to follow through with it, because you may never know that at that pivotal moment, it's going to change your life forever. But what did you learn in manufacturing and higher education that think most leaders in the car business still miss?
Yeah, I think what I see from my experience and what I'm seeing with many of our clients is we get really focused on the results, which we need results. We need results. We need sustainable results for the long term. We get sometimes too focused on how can I get this result tomorrow or next week or this year, and I don't build systems and processes and things that become scalable and repeatable. And so what I see is, as a business is growing, they do really good at building like infrastructure, brick and mortar and IT systems and those kinds of things. What they usually forget is the people and process infrastructure to say, how do I scale these things so I don't have to do heroics for the next cycle of growth?
The thing is, as you mentioned, that having worked with Toyota for a number of years, that's where I've learned most of my skills and my knowledge, thanks to Toyota Motor Corporation. And they had, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Toyota way in sales and marketing.
Yep.
Their philosophy, and they talk about the product, the policy, the pricing, and the packaging. But the most important thing, which is also a spin-off from the 4 levels of marketing. If you're a marketing major, you will actually learn about the 4 Ps. Toyota actually went a step further and implemented 2 more, which is the people and the process. So if there's no process, you can't move forward, and you need the people to drive that process. And without the people, the process won't be possible. And that's why it encompasses why human resource management should be much further than just managing people and managing the resources. It's all about managing the process flow that will allow that company to move from one aspect to the other in terms of how you go about setting out a strategic mission for that company.
Yeah.
But when you hear the words quality, consistency, and customer experience, what parts of an automotive business actually comes to mind first? Is it the showroom, the service lane, or just the back end process?
Yeah, if you're talking customer, it's every moment that you touch a customer. That is the experience. And sometimes our customers, like our clients, will talk to us about their brand. And I like to talk about the brand is not really like the logo and the colors. It's when I think of your company name, do I think, oh, I hate them? Or do I think, oh my gosh, I had this amazing experience and I would absolutely buy from them again? Or so to me, when you talk about it, it's how am I connecting with that customer or the potential customer, and they look at me and say, oh, that experience was easy. You were easy to do business with. I feel like I was taken care of. I didn't get cheated or whatever the words are that you actually my business partner just bought a new car and they had such frankly terrible experience that they returned the car in the 7-day windows, and they went to another dealer, bought the same exact car from another dealer because of the experience.
Yeah, the customer experience is actually vital, especially in today's car buying market where people have more than enough options. So if you feel that you're not being treated right, especially if you're given a window that you can return the car within the warranty period if something actually goes bad, it all depends on how you were dealt with during that buying experience, which is far more important than anything else you see.
Yes.
But let me sidetrack a little away from the sales department because the back end, which is parts and service, they are the pillars of the dealership, or most organizations now, because you even saw it with COVID-19. After it went down, cars weren't selling, but the cars that were still on the road still needed servicing. And the good mechanics actually took advantage of that. So they actually went out and started doing individual service. Not that I'm snitching on them, but they did what they had to do to keep their customers happy.
Yep.
But for dealer service departments or auto suppliers, where do you usually see the biggest breakdown in terms of good intention and real execution?
Yeah, I think to me there's 2 or 3 that I think of. One is when I call to make the appointment, is it convenient, or are you only taking appointments when it's convenient for you versus convenient for most of your customers? That's number one that I see. Is sometimes I see there's really restrictive hours, which I know is a blessing and a curse. Or there's this element of I don't execute it in the time window that I promise, which to me could be a dollars and cents, or it could be, yes, it'll be done by 1, but then I haven't kept people informed about, it's not going to be done at 1, it's actually going to be done at 3. And people jump to the conclusion of, oh, you don't care, you're not taking care of me, when it may be a very legitimate reason that it's not done until 3. But we haven't brought people along to keep them informed. And maybe the last thing is, I think of personas. So when I bought my first car, when I was 16, the rule at our house was you had to save and buy it yourself, and I had to demonstrate to my dad that I could do all my own work. So I not just change the oil, but I had to do brakes, and I'm old enough that I had to clock the timing belt. And some people will say, you had to do what now? Yeah, there were timing belts. And if I have service done now, I want them to show me. Like when they say something and they're explaining it, I kind of want them to show me. I'm probably a certain kind of persona. Others will be they don't want to see. So am I catering to kind of that persona, like, oh, that person likes to go see, let's walk them out and show them. Oh, that person just wants to be clear on, price is important to them, but timing is important to them. So to me, it's kind of those three pieces. Am I keeping my word on what I promised from a price or timing perspective? Am I doing good work? Am I keeping people informed? In my mind, those are the places I see things break down.
And that's human error. It will happen from time to time, especially if the person doesn't have a vetted interest in what they're doing and what their tasks are. Now, systems have been improved to notify the customer exactly what the steps are, especially the mechanics now can actually put information into the system, and then the system will coordinate it and spit that information out to the customer so they can see exactly what is taking place during the service process. Not
Yeah.
all dealerships and not all shops actually have access to that type of system going forward right now, but it is coming, and it is, after a while, it may make the service advisor job redundant, or you won't need as many service advisors as before, because if the technology is available, then you're going to be seeing a lot more cost cutting, because it is happening right now. But if a dealership or a auto repair network, if they wanted to improve results fast, what will be one of the very first process you would look at?
Ooh, if, I'm going to give you two, even though you asked me for one. I'm going to tell you, I think there's two. One
As
is,
much information as possible.
I mean, what I think of it as, well, number one is how do I move from kind of that quote to execution and have as much kind of clarity and on timing and impact of that. I think the other piece in my mind is how do I get more proactive about it, where instead of waiting for the appointment, I know that, oh, the last 3 times this person comes in when, they come in for an oil change, or they come in for this every 2.5 months or every 3 months. How do I get proactive in getting the next
Right.
appointment scheduled or reaching out? And I actually would not be surprised that there would be some sort of, and this may be happening now, it's nowhere that I know of, is some sort of subscription where I pay one fee and I can get, these things just handled for me. Everything has a subscription. I can watch Disney and I can get, I can trade in my phone at whatever frequency, and I just pay this dollar amount. But think about this, that I could have
Yeah.
this guaranteed income coming, because there are some HVAC places that they have, they're doing you're part of the Gold Club or the Diamond Club, and they reach out proactively, and they come in and they change your filters and they do a service check. And what they're finding is pretty much every time they go, they're finding something that they can do that service, and they're extending the longevity of the system. So they're adding value, and they're
Yeah.
getting that recurring revenue versus the replacement revenue every X amount of years.
Everything and everyone these days is trying to implement a subscription service.
Yes.
And it's not much different from, it's just another level. I think it's just another level of multi-level marketing.
Yes.
Basically
Yep.
what it is. People come in, there's all forms of ways of trying to get people to spend more money. But if you don't need it, based on what I'm seeing, if you don't need it, then they don't need to actually extend that additional expenses to you. That's how I see it. But another question I wanted to follow up with is that, how do you know when a problem is a process issue versus a people issue?
My rule of thumb is if I was to write out the process, or we to talk about a process and say you have some problem happened, and I look at it and I was to say, all right, if I took this person out, I take Jimmy out who did it, and I put Frank in there, could Frank make the same error? And if you tell me, ooh, yeah, or, well, no, Frank wouldn't make the same error because Frank has 10 more years of experience, To me, if it's that person has more experience, or ooh, that same error could happen, it's a process problem. Plain and simple.
What measures would you have in place just to prevent preventative maintenance in that aspect? How would you prevent something from not performing that same problem again?
Yeah, I mean, we can train all we want. To me, it's how do we make the process so we can't do it? I mean, I'd love to train everybody on everything, and the reality is I can't. I get them as much as I can, and then they're going to have to experience, you know, the weird things that happen, right?
Yeah.
And they have to learn from that. So to me, it's how do you make the process so you can't do it wrong? Okay. I think that's number one. If any car designers are listening, like how you design something then becomes super important. I had a car once where had somebody do some service, and when they took the radiator off, it if they didn't put it in the right 5 steps, it actually caught the hood latch. And even though your hood would close, it wouldn't stay latched. And I went and drove it on the interstate, and my hood flapped up. And because the design of the vehicle. So to me, there's a design element, and then there's how do I design the physical thing, but how do I design the process so I can't do it wrong? I think the third piece is I can't train everyone on everything. Can I get them to slow down and just kind of use the gray matter in their head? Because they're not just a mechanic, right? Or they're not just a sales rep. They're doing work for a customer. And if they were that customer, if that was your vehicle, would you do the service that way? Or
And
would
the
you?
funniest thing, I had a series on my
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a series on my YouTube channel that says, how engineers keep mechanics miserable. And you just relate to that in terms of when they're installing a lot of the parts, it goes through a number of steps, but you should see the steps they have to go through to remove that part.
Yes.
Because a lot of the designs in terms of how the car is built in the manufacturing process, the engine is built and organized and placed, and then it is placed into the car with all the chassis and the hood mount and everything else around it. So when the car gets to the mechanic and something needs to be changed, then they didn't take into consideration the steps that implies, or it is installed from the factory in such a conspicuous way. There's no other way to get around it more than just to take the entire engine out, just to even replace a filter. That's how bad it is. So for instance, the Nissan Titan, to change the starter, you have to remove the entire engine and go inside the bell housing. That's where the starter is located. So individuals who actually go out and buy these cars and they get a quotation of around $600 or $700 to replace a starter, then they start tearing out their hair, saying that the mechanic is a ripoff or the shop is a ripoff. No, the ripoff actually starts from the manufacturing process.
Yes.
So
100%.
a lot of people would understand it. Yeah, a lot of people would understand the nuances behind it. But now that I'm going off, in the auto world where, speed matters, how do you think leaders avoid hiring only for resumes and ignore behavior?
Yeah, well, all the research says if I want to hire someone who is a good fit, I need to hire for the skill, their knowledge, skills, and abilities, their heart. Do they align with your values and your mission? And then for their mind, what are their behavioral things? Because for me, what's so fascinating when I talk to people, and you actually go back and you look at, okay, of all the people you have fired in the last 6, 12, 18, 24 months, what were the reasons? Seldom is it they couldn't do the job technically. It's usually they're a jerk. We sometimes use a different word, okay? But hey, they're not nice. They're not good to work with. Show up late.
There's a thing we lack back in the day. It was called job fit personality. You can't fit a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah.
So when you see videos online, people are actually crying they can't get a job. They sent out 15 resumes. They did at least 4, 5, 6, or 7 interviews. What am I doing wrong? So instead of going to someone, nobody knows you exactly, so they can actually sit down with you and say, okay, let's go through these 15 to 20 interview questions to see how well can you answer these questions,
Yes.
because recruiters, they know exactly who they're looking for. So
Yeah.
so a lot of people, they bypass that part and start to look at the emotional aspect and start to take it personally in terms of why this person doesn't want to hire them anymore.
Yeah, no, and so, this piece about we would recommend you're doing some sort of like skill analysis that you need to do. That could be a test, that could be, do they need to have certain education, whatever that is. And then some sort of cultural interview. Do they fit with who you want to be as an organization? And then using some kind of an assessment, some kind of behavioral assessment that gets at what is important to you, and you design the role and you interview to the design of that role. So many times we're seeing people chase the skill, and they're like, they can fog a mirror, awesome, and they can change a tire, yay. And it's like, no, like, can I work with the person next to me? Can I give them feedback, and will they respond positively to feedback? When a customer comes back and says,
Yeah.
hey, I don't think you did this right, do they look at them and, give them half the peace sign and tell them, get out? Or do they like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and take some ownership of that? All of that becomes so important to the organization,
Yeah.
and many times we miss that.
A lot of people don't understand that recruiters and hiring managers, they have a thing called a competency chart. So they're going to tick the boxes once they're asking the question to see. Even your body language tells a lot how receptive
Yeah.
you are to to joining this team. And there are a number of things that they're actually looking for. But another thing I want to say is that the automotive business is changing fast. How do leaders keep people aligned instead of letting fear take over?
It changes. If you look at the data, right now, the rate of change this year, 2026, is about 10 times faster than it was in 2020. And in 2030, it's expected to be 30 times faster. So another 3 or 4 times faster than it is today. Okay? Which means
Yeah.
I, as a leader, I have to communicate more than I've ever communicated, and I need to stay calm in the places where it's like, whoa, this is being thrust upon us, and what do I do? And how do I just get in front of that and have really honest, frank conversations with people so that they know, like, hey, here's what's coming, and how do we figure this out? And it's my role to bring them along and say, hey, because if I've built that level of trust, and they believe that I have their best interest at heart, when I have to change something that's not great, they may not love it, but at least they can look and say, you know what? Scott had my best interest at heart. And what happens is we get so focused on, well, here's the next change and I'm going to communicate, or I'm going to text it, and it's like, no, that's not how you communicate change. I have to customize the message based on the impact to each person, which means when I talk to Jim, I need to deliver the same message, but how I deliver that might need to be different than with Fred.
Yeah.
Then
That's why you actually try to separate a team or the individuals that
Yes.
adapt from, you separate the team that adapts from the team that actually just reacts.
yes, yeah. And
That's how I
getting-
was actually trying to frame it.
Part of it is I need to get people out of the lizard part of their brain where they're reacting to the logic part of their brain. And the best way to do that is ask questions. If I can get them thinking into the higher part of their brain, the brain science says I reduce the emotional response. And now I can get them into the thinking about it.
But you also have to need to encourage them to ask the questions. A lot of people are afraid of asking questions
Yeah.
because they're afraid of asking the wrong question because they don't want to sound stupid. That's just the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And part of my framing, I would tell someone, no question is stupid. If you don't know, you just don't know. But anyway, it's easier said than done when you're trying to build confidence inside a room or build confidence with your employees. But you have worked across manufacturing, family business, and growth environments. Now, what did pressure teach you that comfort never could?
I think there's lots of pressures that come from many places. In the end, what I have seen is me as a leader, how do I respond to that pressure? So, am I emotional and reactive to that pressure? Or am I thoughtful? And do I manage the process and lead the people in that pressure? And it's okay to be like, hey, this kind of sucks. And I know this kind of sucks, and we have to do this because that is just what we have to do. The customer expects it. If I go and I throw a temper tantrum in front of people, that doesn't give them confidence that we're going to get to the other side. So I have to manage myself, and I have to manage process, and I have to lead the people through it. That to me is the number one for pressure. And then number two is, how do you as a leader have something that refreshes you so that you can build your resilience so that you don't get bogged down? Because there's some things you can't talk to people about. And so who do you have to talk to recover from? Whether that is you go work out and you have an exercise regimen, or you and your significant other go out and you have a walk and you vent to each other about work, or you have a friend that you go have a beverage, adult style or non-adult style, whatever is your preference. And if you don't have that, that will be draining for you. So to me, it's those two things.
But the subject of leadership, because even today's modern society, people actually now need leadership than ever before. They're just rejecting the leaders that they think they don't want. And regardless of what our situation is right now, we still need persons who can, hold our hand and say, okay, we got this. Let's just weather the storm right now to see how well we can get over to the other side. But what does a leader do in the first 30 days after a major setback? What do you think about that?
So if we did something and it was we crashed and burned, first thing I need to do is I need to own it. I need to say, you know what?
Okay.
We didn't do well here.
Accountability. That's something that a lot of people don't actually know that word exists. So accountability. Okay.
And if I'm the one in charge, I need to own it, and I need to say that was me. Even if it wasn't my decision, it's me. I got to own it. And then I need to take the time to say what went wrong and what do I need to do different. And we call it the growth question. So it's really 3 questions. What worked? What didn't work? And then what do we need to do different? How do we learn from this? And how do we then share out, here's what we learned from this. And we tried to go too fast, or we didn't include the right people, or we spent too much, or we didn't spend enough, or whatever that is. But to me, if I can't own it and talk about it, I can't get better.
Yeah. But let me go into some 30-second snippets. We want to answer these questions as fast as possible. 30 seconds or less. Why do some leaders confuse activity with progress?
We talk about things as activity instead of outcome or product. We only talk work product. Outcome. We talk about how busy we are. That's the problem.
What is one process most businesses think is working but is actually leaking money?
Boy, if I said marketing, is that bad?
You have to be brutally honest regardless of what the situation
I know.
is.
What people spend on marketing versus what they get out just astounds me. It's not saying marketing is a waste. It's just saying, are you getting the value out, or is there a different approach that you could do that actually gives you a better return?
Yeah, in terms of the scalability and the ROI. So those are the 2 most important things. We have narrowed everything down to what is the return on the investment, and is it cost effective? But why do good people fail inside bad systems?
Well, they fail inside bad systems because the system is bad, right? I mean, good people, they see the bad system, and a lot of times they say, well, I'm going to try and work around that system, and they get their hand slapped. And then they say, well, I don't want to get my hand slapped, so then they fall in line.
Yeah, I had one former CEO that says, everything has to go straight and narrow path. If someone falls with a line, and you slap them back in because you want everyone to be, on the same wavelength. And it took me years for to understand, but especially when we move from one culture to the other. And I said, okay, that's exactly what he means. But no, nobody wants to take accountability. That leads to the next question. What does accountability look like when nobody wants to hear the truth?
Well, if no one wants to hear the truth, I don't think you have accountability. We have to be able to tell the truth. Now, I have to be able to hear the truth, okay? And I need to be able to say the truth in a way people can hear it, okay? But at the end, if people really won't be honest, and I talk about it as, can you hold up the mirror to yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and say, that is true? And if it's like, well, I'm justifying my poor performance, well, then you're not telling the truth. You're telling a piece of the truth.
Yeah, especially when they say, this is my truth. And I'm like, what is my truth and your truth? This is just the truth. Nothing, upsets me more when someone comes with that analogy. Because there's always three sides to a story. Your side, my side, and then there is the truth. How do you create a culture?
Yeah, go. I'm so sorry. I'm interrupting you. I'm rude.
No, go ahead.
You're spot on. And I'm okay if I have a perception and you have a perception and we talk it out and we figure out what do we need to do different. Like, to me, that is getting to the truth. My side and you tell your side, and we're both so focused on telling our sides that we won't listen to each other and understand each other. We won't get to the truth.
Exactly. And how do you create a culture that improves itself?
You have to make feedback normal, and you have to then hold people to that. So if they're not going to give real feedback, and I mean like not brutal and not mean, but just say, hey, that's not good enough. If we can't say that to each other, it will not be self-sustainable and self-improving.
But people are afraid of the payback and the vindictiveness that may come along with it. Sad to say, but not all organizations or individuals who are running particular departments or organizations are mature enough to actually sit down and listen to feedback.
Yes.
Which is which in essence is constructive criticism.
Yes. And feedback is a gift, right? And absolutely is a gift. And it is my responsibility as a leader to listen to that and consider it and ask myself what's right about that feedback. The feedback, there's probably one thing in there, one nugget that is true. How can you learn from that?
Well, nobody wants a teachable moment anyway, because we're afraid of being held accountable. And that is the most important word these days. It's mostly most men will get up and say, or most men who have been exposed to leadership positions, leadership positions of I wouldn't say power, but positions of grandiose, will get up and say, okay, I messed up, and they put certain things in place, not to want to hide or try to pass blame or find someone else to actually put the blame on them and then cover it up. But we could go on and on about this type of situation, because I've seen it so many times in organizations. As soon as something goes out, they find a scapegoat, get that person fired or get that person to resign, and then it's business as usual. And then 2-3 days later, you get a letter from HR saying that new policy guideline update from now on, effective blah blah blah, we're going to be doing this. And then like I said, business as usual, instead of trying to organize a process flow chart and educate the staff from scratch about certain things. Because the biggest detriment we have in our society is our personalities. Your personality is different, mine is different. How can we get everyone to work to a common goal? And that has always been the challenge since the dawn of time. Because you're in your situation where you grew up, your culture may be a lot different from mine. Some people are susceptible to temptations, others are not. Some people are susceptible to the vanity, others are not. So it all depends on the values that you create, which is, again, in the business world, the mission, the vision, and the value is incorporated. And it depends on the CEO or the leader that is driving those values to see to it that the company will be successful if everyone falls in line.
It's all good.
It was more than a leadership conversation, and this was a look into how real businesses get better, how teams grow, and how change actually works when the stakes are high. If any one of my viewers, listeners, they want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Two quick ways. One is you can connect with me on LinkedIn or through our website, www.becomemoregp.com, and happy to connect and have a conversation.
Oh, thank you very much, Scott. It has been a pleasure again. And if you want more information like Scott, as I said, he just mentioned his website. I'll be leaving the links in the description box below. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. The links are in the description box as well. Stay smart, stay educated, and I will catch you in the next one.